to be adjusted, or do I need to adjust it? Do I need to be this way? It doesn't matter. It's good. Okay. So we're on the sheet. We're up to subsection Tet. Now, the Ramchal until now, for those who I think it's good to share. I don't want to start unless we have a copy of Derech Hashem in the shelves. We might have a copy of Derech Hashem floating around. If so, then it's not necessary to share.
Here, I could show this.
So we have an here. Nava, we have. Yeah. Okay, so good. So Tet. So what did we cover until now? Well, Ramchal, before even talking about what happens to the soul after death and what is the resurrection about, he first had to provide us with a lot of foundation so that we understand what's the body for and what's the essential makeup of the human being, and why does it have to be the way it is? Are we still in the original plan A stage of things, or have things shifted so much since the Chet of Adam and Chava? Let me just shut off the ringer. That now we are in a decidedly different world. So much so that the original state, which we described last week, of the body and the soul being in such a state of balance and harmony that the action of the soul, the beneficial effect of the soul on the body would be experienced immediately, right? That was the original plan. You do a mitzvah, and we live so far away from this that it's hard for us to even imagine. Lahavdil elef havdalas, like Rashbi, when he sat with his students, his chavraya in the Idra, right? And they're sitting in the circle. And what does the Zohar Kadosh describe? That it's like the whole place is on fire. It's flames. And it's flames that are so powerful because the Torah is so strong that nobody can come in or go out of the house. Now, there's a way of seeing that as being, well, that's because they had come, Rashbi and his chevra and his chavraya had come to such a state of spiritual elevation and elevation of the physical, that actually what they're experiencing is basically what, not exactly anybody would, but we'll say, that's the essential experience of learning Torah, which is like a fire. It's Eish Das Lamo. And so, how come when we're sitting here together, how come there's not flames? And how come it's because we are in a state of being where there is a gap between, and that's the stage of existence that we're in. There is a distinct gap between what you do, the good that you do, and the experience of the fullness of the good that you do. And the delay of that experience is called the delay of reward. Kibbutz Sachar does not come together at the same time as the action for which one should be rewarded. And so the experience of the feeling of dvekut, of closeness to Hashem, the refinement of the physical, the fact that we're being altered by the mitzvot that we do, that and he spoke about it in a kind of evolving way. The Ramchal uses, if those who were here last week, the language of holech v'gadel, holech u'mizdakech, that the body is ultimately, its purpose is to be refined fully, gradually perhaps, but also cumulatively, by the accumulation of all of the good that we do. And even if we live right now in a world where there's a pause, it doesn't mean that that effect is not accumulating. It is. And that's why it's such a surprise. It's like a person leaves this world, and then what happens to them? Well, it's like all of a sudden they get this reward. But this world was supposed to be in the Chatchila, a single integrated place that is one world, not two worlds, one world. The whole bifurcation of Olam Hazeh, Olam Haba, that there's a now and there's a later, right, is something that has gotten, that now and later wound up, the distance between those two times or phases wound up getting very much extended. And it was not supposed to be that way to begin with. So it's a reflection we see now in Tet, right? Hamita v'atchiyah. Ulam milvad kol zeh. He said, okay, in addition to everything that I've said until now, so gazra midat dino yitbarach shelo yuchlu lo adam lo olam me'ata hegia l'shlemut odam b'tzura shenitkalkela. It is a fact that because our reality has been altered, because ourselves were altered through the sin of Adam and Chava, the body is not the same. The degree of temptation and attachment to the physical that we have is not the same. Everything has changed, and the world has changed. Because of that, we cannot have these two well, and this is something that he said earlier, there are only two phases of time. Two phases of time are the time of work and the time of reward. In human life, we have lots of different phases of time. Before I got married, after I got married. Before I came to Eretz Yisrael, after I came to Eretz Yisrael. Before I had children, after I had children. All of these befores and afters that people have arbitrarily and subjectively in our lives. But objectively, there's only two tukufot in all of human existence. The time of work and the time of reward. Those are the two phases that exist. Now, when we have... So he says, it cannot be, because of the changes that took place, that the reward phase is to be experienced in the physicality and in the body in the same state that we are in right now, having already gone through kilkul, having gone through this radical change and a kind of I don't want to say a kind of deterioration or this a degrading of the original level of physical reality. Its inherent spirituality was altered. Also, the inherent spirituality in the body somewhat altered. So we have to go through changes. Last week, what I mentioned for those who were not here is that even when we went to Sinai, so we had an experience of preparation for being able to receive the Torah at Sinai, which is called going back to the state of Adam Harishon Kodem HaChet, going back to the state of balance that was available to Adam and Chava prior to the sin. This is something that it didn't mean that we were in the state as a people of already receiving reward. Quite the contrary. We came back to a place of zikuch. I guess Leah was talking about zikuch a little bit in the last class, of purification and refinement, which we carry out and we relive year to year during the Sphira period of going through this kind of hopefully a sifting and a refinement and a cleansing of the midot, so that we're in a prepared state to be able to receive the Torah. You have to change your state to be able to receive the Torah. That's why Maharal says it's a separate ma'alah, right? When you sit at the Seder and you say, had Hashem just brought us to Sinai and not given us the Torah, dayenu, it would have sufficed for us.
We're starting a new.
We're moving. We're still in the paper up to letter Tet.
So I think I have.
If you should have it from the last week, the week before. So we have. So that's not. It's dayenu just to get to Sinai, even without the Torah. Why? Because the state of cleansing and purification in readiness, like a kind of getting back to that just neutral state of being neither too drawn to negative and not compelled to the positive, but just free, to be free. Yeah.
Did Adam and Chava have relations before the sin?
Yeah, well, yes, they did, because it says that the Nachash saw them having relations. V'anachash haya arum, right? It says v'shnehem arumim, then ends Perek Bet, begins Perek Gimel of Breshit, v'anachash haya arum. And so Rashi carries over, he says that's a smichut. Hanachash is arum, he's clever. What did he see? He saw shnehem arumim, v'lo yitbosheshu. And the two of them were naked and not embarrassed. So that kind of neutrality, right? That it's you're free. That neutrality isn't ephes. It's not nothing. It's a freedom. I'm not too drawn this way. I'm not too drawn that way. I can choose this direction or that direction freely without having an attachment specifically to one way or the other way. That's called to go back to the state of Adam Harishon Kodem HaChet.
On Israel, they didn't have relations before receiving
3 days before. No. The cleansing of Shloshet Me'Hagbalah is already a post-Chet reality. Yeah. Okay, so we say so we cannot go into the state of reward, to shlemut, to completion and perfection, while we're still in the same state that we were in when we were damaged. Which means the world has to alter and we have to alter. In this reality, this phase of reality in which we live, there's tigboret hara. That means to say there is a stronger tendency towards negativity than there is positivity. That's the natural state, and we sort of we're kind of swimming upstream a little bit. We have to, we're going to have to go through some degree of deterioration. When he uses the term deterioration of hefsed, he doesn't mean loss. he means loss, but he's talking about a kind of decomposition or alteration. Dahainu, hamita la'adam, v'hafsed l'chol shar ha'havim shenitkalkela imo. So it means human death, right? The fact that we are mortal is part of the readying process to be able to come back to a state of preparation to receive reward. The fact that we look at this as being for us tragic or only a loss or so for some people would say even unbearable to contemplate, right? That the body has to die, that it has to go through its decomposition. Ramchal tells us, no, that's a necessary stage of change that every human being has to go through in order to be prepared for the proper receiving of reward. It's not, he doesn't even speak about it in terms of punishment. That's not what he's talking about. He talks about, it means the body has to be essentially altered. Now you say, but decomposition and decay, which is what we would call death, right? My father, we were with him in the room when his neshama left his body. And when mother comes in, so what do they say? So they come in and they have to establish, they have to confirm that there's been a death. So he wasn't in the hospital, he was in his bed. And so we're still sitting in the bed with him, my sister and I, and all of this procedure is going on. And they're very sensitive and they were very sweet, but what do they say? They say, open the window. You should open the window. They say very delicately, you should open the window. Why? As soon as the chayus is out of the body, as soon as the life principle, the soul, is out of the body is already starting to decay. Yeah. So I laughed at the guy who said it. And then my son was also there. He also works for mother. I laughed at him. I said, there's nothing here for him to decay. What is it? He was already so refined in the goof. I said, don't worry, it's okay. We'll open the window. The window's already open. We'll open the window more, but because the alteration of the body through tshuva, through action in this world, through yisurim especially, that's an alteration that a person can accomplish, which readies the body for tchiyah and for reward even before they leave this world. But it doesn't matter, because in the end, no matter what a person accomplished in this world, whether they were alive or not, when the soul leaves the body, already it's going through an extremely humbling experience. That's considered to be the body being mitparek, which is he's going to explain now, which is one of my, I have to say, I'm not a morbid person, I don't think by nature, but this happens to be one of my favorite sections of Derech Hashem, because he explains the process, the necessary process of deterioration of the body in the most, in an essentially beautiful way, so that we can understand it and not feel, not repulsed by it and not afraid of it, but just to understand what the purpose is. So you have to go through this state of hefsed, of loss, and it means decay. That's called death. Hefsed l'chol shar ha'havim shenitkalkelu imo, and also the world as a whole has to go through an alteration process. It has to go through a major change. Shalom, shalom. ולא תוכל הנשמה לזכך הגוף, אלא אחר שתצא ממנו תחילה, וימות הגוף ויפסד. It's only possible for the soul to have its natural, its original positive purifying effect on the body, meaning the body only becomes a fit vessel to be a full, harmonious reflection of the light that the neshama produces because of its good actions and everything that all good that it's accumulated. The body only becomes fit to shine with the light of the neshama, which was its original purpose, after having gone through this period of hefsed, of loss and decay. After that, the body is rebuilt. It goes through its period of hefsed, which is deterioration, and afterwards it's rebuilt. So it's not that immediately the soul immediately comes into, after the resurrection, after Tchiyat HaMetim, it shines with its full light. Quite the contrary. The body, after the period of death and decay, and this is true for every human being, has its time where it has become a fit vessel, a fit kli. And it's funny because what we see of the body, right, we look at the decayed body and say, how is that becoming a kli? It's becoming nothing. No. In becoming nothing, it becomes a kli. In becoming nothing, it becomes a kli. You can only have, a kli is only valuable as a vessel, it only has space to hold something because it's been cleaned out, because there's nothing in it. When the body, the soul leaves the body itself goes into a state of deterioration, and its essence, the essence of the body, of the physicality of the person, is now being made ready for rebuilding, for reconstruction.
It's a vessel for
the soul to come back, for the soul to return in the time of Tchiat HaMetim, so that it can now shine fully with the light of the soul. It's like you make a bracha on your food, like, I don't know, your mouth should be glowing, your intestines should be shining with light, your whole Marechet Tikul should be full of like glory. How come you don't see it? You don't see it because the body right now is not in a state of peace and harmony with the soul. We are not in a state of being able for the soul to shine its light into the body and through the body. So the body has its tikkun that it has to go through, and the soul has its tikkun that it has to go through. Yeah.
Okay. So it's when you're decaying, you're becoming a vessel to return
yes,
back to
to be rebuilt. The body will be rebuilt at the tchiyah. The soul it re-inhabits the body, and the body and the soul together now can start the road together of shalom and harmony, where the light of the soul begins to shine through this vessel and cause it to evolve steadily into an ever-increasing garment of ore. Instead of kotnot ore with an ayin, instead of having bodies that are made out of leather. What's leather? Leather is skin. Instead of garments of skin, we'll have, like it says in Rabbi Meir's Torah, what does it say? Kotnot Adam and Chava were given after the sin. Kotnot or with an aleph. First they are kotnot or with an ayin. And then after the tchiyah, after the resurrection, the body will become garments, kotnot or with an aleph, of light. And so it's hard for us to imagine because it sounds like science fiction. You understand? It's like, like these glowing aura-dic bodies that are not so physical. They're still in a physical world. The whole physical world alters. It's different. It's like the stuff of fantasy. No, that is what we're looking forward to. An altered universe, an altered physical reality, and altered bodies to experience this altered physical reality. All of it in a state of harmony and balance. Yes? Something to look forward to. Okay. So, because when you getting up for Tchiyah is amazing, we're not returning to this reality. We're returning to a purified and altered reality. That's the difference. And just like the body will be rebuilt, people always ask these questions. Like, which body? Like, there's so many dilgulim, so which body come back in? So there's a lot of different answers for it. Is it the body with which you completed your tikkun? By the way, there were even great Kabbalists who said, that's why the universe is so big.
Why?
There are many, many worlds. Mm-hmm. Many worlds that will be inhabited. Every tzaddik gets shai olamot. Every tzaddik has 310 worlds that are his. What does it mean? In physical reality, the universe is... We don't have to speculate too much about what this looks like in actuality because it's so far beyond our experience. But that the body as it is right now is a vessel that has work that it has to go through. It must go through. It's like we all look at like aging. I remember I had when my mother was diagnosed. This is going back a long time because Baruch Hashem, she's healthy and well, and she came out of her illness. But when she was diagnosed, however many years ago, it was like 20-something years ago, about 20 years ago. So, a little bit more. So she, a Rav that we're very close with was visiting, and he said, it's very good. It's very good. Now, obviously, everything that Hashem does is very good. But he said, no, it's very good. It's also very good, like, you get to a certain... that in physicality, every person is different, but everybody comes to a point of, like, peak performance of the body. Mm-hmm. After that, it's all downhill. Okay, but is it? Like, is that called downhill? Just like, is the decay of the body in the ground, is that called downhill? Is that called coming to nothing? Or is it the fact that when people have to go through even the changes and alterations and hefsedim that take place in the body naturally because of aging? So all of the losses of the body, because there are losses that accrue in aging. Some people age better, some people age worse. But is that a bad thing? No. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu organized this so that a person doesn't stay at peak performance until they're whisked out of the world. That's not how it works. Mm-hmm. Because a person must already prepare themselves for the fact that the body has to go through hefsed and loss in order to come to its perfection. And so very often we find the people who continue to grow through life and change and evolve through life spiritually As they get older, it's true, the body has its complaints that it manifests, right? Nevertheless, you find over and over again, but this person is becoming more beautiful, stronger, better, right? That's the goal, is that as the body goes through its changes, whether it's before we die or after we die, that all of this is happening as a kind of revelation. As it deteriorates, more pnimiyut is being revealed. That's the relationship that exists. Okay, let's see.
I have just a question for you.
Yeah.
I heard from a long time ago, Rabbi Ari Khan, who kind of had some questions on gap year, a bunch of 18-year-olds talking about life after death. It's so interesting. We're bombarding with questions, and I don't know where it's from. I don't know if you know the source of where it says we're going to return at our peak performance.
Right, so that's one of the answers. At whatever your peak is. So that's the question. Does it mean peak physical body? Is it the body in which you completed the tikkun of this particular part of the neshama? Does it mean only that nitzotz that was embodied in that particular gilgul, only a little spark or bit of the neshama in the work that it has to do? Because we are all, at this point, we tend to be sparks, subdivisions of neshamas that have work to do. We do them in relationship with each other. But it's not like we're doing the totality of the work of a single soul. We're not.
Will separate parts of my soul return at the same time?
Well, you're just a separate part of some other neshama
right,
parts.
So in another existence.
That's the thing. It's like so which one? So those are the kinds of questions where we say, v'niskeh, v'nichye, v'nireh. Let's get there. Let's be zochet to it. Let's see then what happens. Because for us to speculate, it winds up being... There are many different answers potentially, but you could go all the way from. You can go all the way from the opinion like I just mentioned. Every nitzotz in every guf at its peak performance point, right, is resurrected into an actual physical body that needs actual physical space, and so therefore the universe is so very large. It means to say worlds upon worlds physically, or whether it means much more condensed than that, right? Through the totality of a particular soul coming to its perfection in all of its sparks conjoining together. That's a different way of looking at it. But either way, it doesn't wind up being, it doesn't matter. Right? Yeah. To us, it doesn't necessarily matter all that much, what the mechanics do. Okay, let's see. I've said the whole shara, here. And so to the entire world. Just like the body has to go through this individually, so to the whole world has to go through this. It will be destroyed from its current form. And it's going to be rebuilt in a different form. Therefore, it has been decreed by the divine will that the human being has to die and come back to life, be restored and resurrected. And that's what's referred to by the term Tchiyat HaMetim, resurrection of the dead. This happens also to the physical world as well, because the rebuilt, reconstituted, respiritualized body requires a rebuilt, reconstituted, respiritualized world in which to dwell. It says in the Gemara that 6,000 years the world will exist, and then in the 7,000th, 1,000 years is going to be destroyed. And at the end of the 7th, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu returns and he refreshes and renews his world. And the idea of the 6 and the 7, it's also those periods of time, not everyone agrees that we're talking about 6,000 years as they are counted, or 6 stages plus stage 7. But it doesn't matter, because you can also recognize already there's 6,000 years in the sense that there's 6 days of the week, right? Meaning the complete expansion of all that has to be done in the mundane world as it is. That's called 6 days or 6,000 years, or 6 directions. And then you have the Nakuda Pnimis coming out, that innermost point starting to emerge. And that's called Shabbos, or it's called Shemitah, or it's called in the cycle of years, or in the cycle of the big history, it's called the 7,000th. But either way, it's the time when the Pnimiyut emerges. Now, the Pnimiyut emerging, during this time of Korban, it's very interesting, because the fact that it parallels Shabbos, when you're not doing, right? Not doing, and when you say, Me'en olam haba, right? So it's very interesting, because the 7,000th year is actually that 7,000th is the time when the body is doing nothing and the soul is delighting in the way that it delights and receiving its reward and also going through its own tikkun. That's a separate issue, right? And then the actual resurrection is post, is not in the cycle of 7, but it's actually already 8, right? It's beyond.
End of the 7?
End of the 7 is where everything comes back to life. And that's like Hanukkah. Like that's the Hanukkah's Habayis. It's like, oh, that's 8. It's like you have 8 days of Mila. No, this is not only like a Shabbos that's within this framework of 6 plus 1, but something that's a totally transformative and it's not just a soul in a body, but it's now a transformed body. That's the Mila, that's 8. That's after the 7. Okay, let's go on. V'hinei, we're up to Yud. V'hinei, lefi shorish zeh, zman hagmul amiti. Therefore, according to these principles as he laid them out, zman hagmul amiti, the genuine, actual time for reward, dahainu, zman kibul ha'sachar shezachanu lamala, the actual receiving of spiritual reward in its fullness for all of the good that a person does through the activity of the soul, umekomo, and the place where it happens, hu achar hatchiyah ba'olam sheyitchadesh. That all takes place after Tchiyat HaMitim. And when people make mistakes about this, and they think that when a person dies, that they go off to the place of reward where they are rewarded for the mitzvot that they do. And that is not true. That is not exactly what happens. The fullness of reward is not when the soul and the body are separate from one another. Because the original purpose of creation was that the body and the soul should be partners to one another. And therefore, just like the work has to be done with body and soul put together, the ultimate reward can also only be when the body and soul are together. Because you can't reward them separately. You cannot, each one, the interim phase, what we call in our time now, of the period of death, post-death, and between the time of death of the individual and resurrection of the individual and of the world as a whole, that period of time, which in the case of the generation that will immediately precede the Tchiyah, that means the later generations, like our generation, right? That is already hopefully closer to the time of Mashiach and preceding the Tchiyah. So everybody has to die and everybody has to be resurrected. For those of us who are under the impression that we would like to live to see Mashiach so that we don't have to die, I hate to break this to you, but everybody has to die. That's not something that anyone gets out of. Everybody has. No one gets out of here alive, basically. Now, that doesn't mean that there will be, Chazal tell us, there'll be a generation that's so close to the time of Tchiyah that their death will only be an instant. Their death will be almost instantaneous, and immediately afterwards they'll experience Tchiyah. However, the changes that have to take place in the body must go through this experience of, we call it, it's like the ultimate humbling experience. Jewish customs and halachot regarding what we do with the body. The fact that we are so very particular on Kluras Yisrael, the body has to go in the ground. We don't dispose of the remains of any person except through burial in the ground. In Eretz Yisrael, we have the great and wonderful schus of being able to bury traditionally, which means not in a box. No box. They take the custom Yerushalayim, Minhag Yerushalayim, is that they take the nifter, I don't know if anyone's ever been to a Yerushalmi funeral, but the custom in Yerushalayim is that the nifter is in shrouds, and also until the person is brought to burial, on top of the shrouds they are wrapped in the talis. The shrouds is like the Big Day Kahuna. Now people don't realize that. They mimic the Big Day Kahuna. And the better shrouds are made out of linen. Just like the Big Day Kahuna, the simple Big Day Begadim of the Kohanim Pshutim, the Edyot, were made out of fine linen. So it's possible to get shrouds made out of cotton, but if you pay more, so you get handmade shrouds of linen. Now the linen shrouds, they mimic the beged of the Kohen. It means no matter who you were in your life, and no matter what you did in your life, every Jew goes into the ground. We're talking about Kohanim, Levim, Yisraelim, men, women, parents and children. Everybody goes into the ground like a Kohen. That's how everybody goes into the ground. Now the shroud is surrounded for the covet of the mace, so the person is wrapped in a talis. For the man, it's generally speaking the talis that he wore during his lifetime, but he's not buried in that talis. In America, in Chutz La'aretz, they have different customs. I'm talking about customs of Yerushalayim. But the talus will go back to the family afterwards because they don't need the talus in the grave. The talus will come back and be given back to the family. Now, so how is the